Good evening, good afternoon, hello, and welcome to another episode of Storybook series. Super excited to have you here today. It's another episode, and I do hope that you get enough juice from today's episode. Today, I have an amazing guest with me today. I have one and only. She's an amazing writer, and I'll do an intro for her. Her name is Bunmilofe Akingbola. Bumi, thank you for coming. It's amazing to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ivy. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So I'm just going to quickly read Bumi's bio before we go. Bumi is the author of an amazing little book, The Little House on Harvey Road. Pardon me. So Bumi is the author of The Little House on Harvey Road, and it's a book of our personal musing. So I just do a quick bio of Bumi. So Lofa Mide, or Bunmilofe, as she's fondly called, is a copywriter, UX writer, script writer, and an experienced wordsmith. When she's not creating value with words, she's relaxing with her family and friends, volunteering at church, or exploring the world via books and reality television. A contributor to several publications, both offline and online, The Little House on Harvey Road is her first published collection. She's married to Akingbola, a most talented former boss, and they are blessed with the most amazing little girl. Welcome to the show, Bumi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so The Little House on Harvey Road is your very first book.
Yes, full anthology that is published. Yes, the little house on Harvey Road is it.
So how did you know it was time to finally get your book out?
Oh, okay. So the stories had been in my head for years, but I think what really pushed me to eventually put pen to paper is the fact that the last experience that I captured in the book, because the book is a collection of both and some musings and then some personal experiences. Last experience, every time I shared it with someone, they would want to relate to it. They want something. Sometimes I say, let me record what you're saying. This is so nice. And I realized that more people need to see this. We need to put this down. We need to have it kept somewhere. We can't just know these things and go through these things and have these insights and not share it. And also, I'd been privileged to help some other people write their books, ghostwrite books for them. But when it came to writing for myself, it just seems like quite a task. So I said that it was time to write my book. And then I started the process. It took a bit of time because, the commitment that it required, the consistency, and then analysis paralysis also happened. Kept wondering if I've waited this long to write my first book. I've written stories since I was in primary school, random stories, and then all this while I didn't write. What I'm writing now, it has to be great, otherwise the weight will be rubbish. But eventually, it became a thing. What really helped was now to give it timelines. Once I had a deadline in mind, I knew that there was no going back. Then I got a couple of accountability partners to people who kept on asking me, what chapter are you? What are you doing now? And it really helped. So when it became a landmark thing, like I had to do this before this time, I think that's when it finally happened.
Oh, great. So how long did you take it to write the book?
So actually write the book, I think it was taking about 4 months. I think about 4 months is what it took to write the book. Like deliberate, concerted 4 months. And I'd had clips and bits jotted here and there over the years. But to sit down and say, okay, I'm writing this book. What's the first chapter? How do we begin? And all of that. It was taking 4 months. I would basically write at night after my day job, because I work 9 to 5. At night after my day job, and on weekends sometimes. So maybe like 4 to 5 months, yes.
Okay, that's true. Your day job is you are the lead content
at InterSwitch.
At InterSwitch.
Yes.
So yeah. How is it writing content? How is writing content different from writing a book?
So it's different because so book. So let me start up. Writing a book is creating content. So it's a book is a type of content, but is somewhat different because the way we write content at work, we write to meet certain objectives. So we know what this is what we want to achieve. This is how we want to achieve it. Writing a book is writing something that is more what's the word? It's going to last longer. It's like really putting your feet in front of time. So it's going to take a lot more thinking and deliberateness. So we do content every day. There's short objectives, long objectives, long term, short term. we want to make it happen. Sometimes it's a script, sometimes it's a website, sometimes it's, but for a book, you are putting down thoughts that generations after you will read. You are creating a safe place for the things on your mind. You're opening up your heart to other people to come in to see things from your perspective. Even when you're writing fiction, it's still the same thing because there's coloration of your person all over it. So writing a book I find it more intentional because of the kind of impacts it can have.
So how were you able to get out of your mind that analysis paralysis that you were into? How were you able to get out of it to get the book to paper finally? As in after all these years, you always wanted to do this, the collection of your music. How were you able to get out of your mind and say, okay, this is yes, I'm accountable, but I need to be able to understand that this is for me, not just for somebody else.
And that's that thing that you just mentioned, that the fact that it's my own. I came to the point where I was like, is my truth, is my story, is my thoughts. You don't have to accept it. I told myself and sat down and said, I've read several books that I didn't quite agree with, but the person wrote it anyway because it was real to them. And then one of my senior colleagues that I really respect in the industry one day looked at me and said, for every rubbish I read in town is somebody that dared to do something. You can complain that it's rubbish. You can analyze it and say, what this person even do. But you that you know what to do, what have you done?
What have you done?
What have you done? Yeah, you keep saying, what is the kind of thing that this person wrote? See this book. What does it even mean? You that you know, can we say you've done anything? And I realized that if these truths have worked for me, if they work for other people, it's worth putting down. Whether or not is, and then there's room for growth. The truth is that I look at things I blogged 4 or 5 years ago and I'm like, what was I thinking? Sometimes you open it and it's like gold, like, oh wow, I wrote this, fantastic. Sometimes it's like, what was I thinking? And you could just listen from your blog, like, I don't want this on my blog anymore. But it's a journey of growth. My first book and my 5th book, they won't have the same standard. I have to give myself room to grow. I have to create opportunities for myself to grow. Even famous authors, sometimes you read their first stories, second stories, it probably has the same kind of intensity, has same kind of personality, but you see the growth in the writing style, in the preciseness, in the way they use things. So I said, we're going to do this and we're going to grow by it.
I totally agree with you, because I think that's one place that people get really stuck, like that place of perfectionism. I was telling somebody today, I said, that thing has gotten me quite a number of times, because when I want to do something, like, it has to be perfect. Actually, when it's creative writing, and because I love writing so much, I can get in my head. In fact, yesterday I remembered something which was quite crucial for me. When I want to write, like people, I could write for like different people and do things free. But when I start being paid for writing, if you pay me for writing like this, I'll just get stuck there.
Like, man, I have to deliver on this. I understand that. I understand how that feels. Like, oh wow, you're trusting me to come through, and it has to be
Have you ever been in that place where it was like you really tried, you were just stuck in that moment, like, oh my god, I have to deliver this day.
Yes, I actually have been. In fact, very recently, somebody what's the word, employed my services to ghostwrite her book, and it's a simple story really. So when I want to ghostwrite, I basically have a meeting with the person, I'll take a recording of their thoughts and then go home to do it. When I was doing the interview, it was sweet. It was about a divorce process that she had gone through, and she wanted to share her experience with being divorced in Nigeria. But when I got home and I listened to the recordings, I just couldn't write. Or I was stuck on this thing for maybe weeks, because I kept on thinking myself that it would have been nice to talk to this guy. What's his perspective? At some point, I feel like this marriage could have worked. Am I contributing to a divorce by writing this? I was just stuck. I given her, she had paid her advance, she had done advance payments, I given her a commitment, but I was just stuck. I had to come to the point and say, Bumi, this story is not your story. Present this story as best as you can. This person knows what they're expecting, you know their objective. Meet it at the best of your ability.
So in reading your story, one of the interesting, like in the beginning, I remember you talked about Auntie Tokwe, and how she called you to pray with her, you and your brother to pray with her. So if you have to go read the book to get the full gist, and I love the innocence. childhood innocence that both of you brought to that experience. But at the point where it was happening, were you thinking, oh, at least I'm actually recording a new experience? At that point where it was like, oh, yeah, a part of what she's trying to do.
At that point, I was like maybe 5 or 6 years old. It wasn't any. In fact, that whole first story, the Ode to Neighbors Past, is the first story in the book. People have come to say, oh, is it most engaging for them? They find it very interesting. And there are things that really did happen in places that we lived. I just happened to think back one day at all the neighbors that we've had. I was wondering where all these people are now. And I realized that, wow, we have a wealth of stories from just the places that we've lived as families. And I remember sitting down with my mom and just talking to her about, do you remember Auntie this? Remember Uncle that? Baba this? Yeah, that. And some of them she could recall. But a child's mind is very active, almost photographic. You see things and they stay. And in raising my own family now, I'm mindful about where we live and what kind of neighbors we have, because I just realized recently. So I had a situation which led to me putting that chapter in that book, actually, putting the chapter about our neighbors and getting involved in their lives in that book. I had a situation where I had a neighbor that was extremely very nice, and she was kind to me and my little daughter and all of that. But and she would want my daughter to come play with her. Would want to go play with her, but she had adult children, and although they were very kind and very nice, I just felt like these people are going to be watching adult TV and playing adult songs. Is it safe for my child? And just took me back down at the many influences that we've had in our lives that we're realizing, from the way your neighbor dresses can inspire how you pick your style. Kind of car somebody used to drive in your compound and say, I'm going to buy my first car, I'm going to get BMW, and you think back, you realize. So it's a lot of interesting.
So indirectly, they were contributing to your growth and development.
Exactly, without even realizing, without my parents realizing, without even me taking notes, without them realizing, we're just living their lives. Like the most famous man in that book is Baba Godwin, and is a really nonsensical person in every way. In fact, my brother was telling me after he read the book that, do I know that the reason he's never drunk in his life because of that man? I just saw that man and said, if this is what alcohol does to people, I'm not going to drink this thing. Now, this one that is almost 40 in his 30s and all of that, and all his life, he just knew that I don't want to be this man, just from being neighbors. And I actually enjoyed recounting the stories myself.
That's really, really rich. So what's your favorite story in the entire book? I know you mentioned the last and first, but what would you say is your own personal favorite story?
It would be Oluwafemi Darare. Oluwafemi Darare is the story of how I struggled with infertility and fibroids, and how God eventually made a way and gave me a daughter. It's a very deep one for me, very emotional. I've had lots of miracles in my life. I've had a lot of deliverances that have come through, but that is like the height. Particularly because I'm used to being able to do things. So something as natural as childbirth now becoming a challenge was a big one, and it was indeed a journey of faith. It was beyond me. So I think that's really like my favorite story, because it's a living miracle. I live with this miracle every day, and I just stumbled on her and she asked some question, and I'm like, wow, this girl, everything they said will happen to this girl.
And she came to our recording today.
Yeah, she came to our recording today. So that's really like my it's like a major. If it was in the days of the patriarchs in the Bible, they would say they built an altar. I would say writing Oluwafemi Darare in that book, like me building an altar, so that maybe one day she will read it and her children will read it and remember that her life is a miracle, essentially.
So having to recount that story, was it easy for you? Because you talked about how deep it was during the experience. Having to recount it, to rewrite it, was that easy for you?
No, it wasn't. And that's the chapter I struggled with the most. I'd written everything, and it was just that. But I knew that the book wouldn't be complete without it. I knew that I was in need of what God would have me share beyond the other interesting, nice things. It was difficult because I had to relive it again somewhat. And then I had to pick, should I put this part? What was too personal to put out there? Was too much information to put out there? Would it really help anybody? It was, in fact, my people that were involved with me, I kept on calling, like, I didn't know it was this serious. You didn't share this much when you were going through. We just know you had a difficult pregnancy. You didn't say it was this bad. You just knew you were waiting. You didn't know it was like this. You didn't know it was like that. And so it was me opening up basically my life to the world. And not just my life now. There's life of my spouse. There's life of some of my family members, just opening it up to the world. But I find that eventually the gains are more than the means. In fact, very recently, I got an email from a random guy who said they just lost a baby, a pregnancy, and how they stumbled on the book. And I really helped his wife. Get over because the loss of a child is serious, whether it's 1 day old in your stomach or 5 days old or 10 years old. A child is a child to you. And those kind of comments that I keep getting, those kind of emails I keep getting, just keeps like, okay, it was worth sharing. Another one that was really, really hard was the actual Little House on Harvey Road story. That was difficult to write because the situation was actually still ongoing at the time. I was just stuck in the quagmire, and I struggled. Is it premature to write this? Shouldn't I wait for the miracle to pull through before I write about it? But I kept feeling like we need to tell people about process more. We need to not just show results, but talk about what it's taking to get there. So while I'm still in the middle of this, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what I'm going through now. And I've gotten amazing feedback from that. So people who are maybe struggling with where they live, who are struggling with, they're wondering, am I being ungrateful? Am I being greedy, wanting more for myself? And they've come back to say, thank you. This really helped me to enjoy my situation where I hope for better. This really helped me to prepare for what could come. This really helped me to cope with what this really helping me to see the good in what's happening right now. And that was a big turning point for my life, actually. The experience and the writing was a big turning point. It was like I was looking at my situation and saying, I don't care. I'm going to do this anyway. And it's really helped.
So my question is, when you started your journey with writing, did you have any expectations of what the writing will bring or what it will do?
I'd say no, actually. I started writing as a child. My father would keep...
No, I'm talking about your book, like
my book. Oh, okay. Book, yeah. Writing the book, and it wasn't expectations at first. It was just obeying an instruction that I felt God was giving me. It was just finding expression. It was, in fact, I needed to write it to just tell myself I did it. That was the first thing. Just tell myself I did it. I wasn't even projecting to see how much this book bring me or really help me or all of that. It wasn't that I had to do this. And I know that works of art are really, it's hard to quantify where they can go, what can happen with them. So I didn't have I just knew that it was something I definitely had to do. It was going to be a beginning. I understood that if I got that one done, others would easily follow. The first book is typically always the hardest, but once you get on it, it gets better. So I knew that I had to. It was like midwifing my that part of my career, essentially. So,
from having no expectations to the realities now, what has been your biggest surprise?
I wish I'd written the book earlier. I wish I had written the book way much earlier. I see how much opportunities could have opened up just for impacting people's lives, first of all. And then for it's a voice. So when you meet people and everybody can write, everybody says, I can write it. But sometimes what you've done now gives credence. So beyond even at my workplace, people are like, oh, so beyond this business writing and everything that we do, this is a fantastic piece. So there's first impact, there's validation, and there's opportunity for new conversations because of what you have been able to do. So writing that first book is really it's a good milestone to hit, really, if it's in your path, if it's the roadmap for you.
Thank you so much. Any future projects you look forward to?
Oh yes. I hope to another book is scheduled for next year. By God's grace, started working on it already. It's called Helpers Anonymous, and I'm looking forward to doing great stuff with it. I'm trusting that God will come through again and to be even better than the last. And this time around, because with the Little House, at the beginning I wasn't willing to sell. I just wanted to give it out and just even gauge impact, just gauge how he's going to do. And I have people send me money to say, you don't want to sell this book, but I can't read it for free. It's too good. And just send me money and just say, please sell this. So with the next one, I feel like I've now been properly indoctrinated, proper initiated. So the next one, I'll be doing proper distribution plan, sales plan, making extensive professionalism, bringing it to play with that one. So maybe get a publisher and just go the whole 9 years. By God's grace.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Bunmilofe. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you for honoring our invitation again. You can get Bunmilofes. I'm going to put the link for you to be able to purchase a book. It's a token, it's just 1,000 naira. I'm going to put the link so you can go get the book. I can tell you that it's an amazing piece of writing. I've read it. It's really sweet to read. It's a page turner, and I'm not just saying that to say that Bunmi writes really, really well. Thank you, Bunmi. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Ivy.
It's amazing having you on. And thank your daughter for coming in our recording today. So thank you, everybody. Next week we'll have another guest for you. Stay tuned and remember to share the link. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ivy. Enjoy.
Thank you.